Good morning, everyone. Travis here again with Lucky Tackle Box. Guys, nothing more frustrating fishing than getting out in your favorite body of water, your favorite spot, and there's a bunch of boats. There's already a bunch of guys that look like they fished that area. Then you get out there, have some trouble, and then go, oh my gosh, did somebody already come catch all these fish? Am I fishing an area that's just been too beat up? Well, today, we're gonna talk about the little things you can do, the adjustments, the slight little things you need to pay attention to be able to maximize your success on pressured bodies of water. And that starts with using the right baits. So today we're gonna use Big Bite Baits, real Deal Craw, which came in your October Lucky Tackle Box. We're gonna rig that up on some heavier tackle, and we're gonna be punching that heavy structure. These fish and these lakes, they're always gonna be holding tight, and even when they're pressured, they're gonna hold even tighter to thick cover, tree limbs, all that kind of good stuff that we're gonna be targeting today, but we're gonna have to make some little adjustments because any fisherman that goes by goes, wow, look at that log. That's gonna be a good place for me to flip. We're gonna show you how you can actually flip it a little bit different and hopefully be able to catch those fish those other fishermen left behind. So let's get out on the water. Oh yeah, there it is. There we go, that connected with a nice one. Baby, ain't nothing wrong with that. And once again, if you guys wanna know if they're eating this thing, if they're honed into it, they are. I'm gonna show this camera right here. Look how far back that bait is. That fish annihilated that thing. And we have learned our first little tip of the day. When you're going out here, you don't want to just fish where you think these fish are going to be and stick with that. You make little adjustments throughout the day and you let the fish dictate what you're going to do. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but I'm going to release this little guy and we're going to keep fishing. The setup I like to use most of the time with flipping is I'll start with 65-pound Seaguar flipping line. It's gonna be enough to get out of that heavy, nasty stuff. I always want to be prepared for the most extreme situations because a lot of times that's gonna be where those bigger fish are. It's gonna be where a lot of people aren't willing to fish. Then I rig it up on a heavy rod, 7.6 to 8 foot, heavy, fast action rod, so you got enough backbone really to horse those fish out. You're making real short little flips, so the reel isn't that important. And then I like to, the actual rig itself is gonna be 3 to 4/0 straight shank flipping hook. And then I have a 1 to 1.5 ounce tungsten weight. You can use a heavier weight depending on how thick the vegetation is, because usually you're gonna need something a little heavier to get through thicker stuff. And then lastly, I peg that weight to the hook. I don't want that weight sliding up and down because a lot of times that'll mean the weight is gonna slide down in the cover without the bait. You want everything going down together. That is crucial when flipping this heavy structure. All right, so let's talk about real quick the Real Deal Craw in particular. What makes a good punch bait is you want something that's got a smaller, compact profile, which this does. So it's gonna slide through all the vegetation, limbs, all that stuff, because if you have something that's got too many appendages coming from it, they tend to snag up on the grass or anything that's coming through, and it won't actually make it down there. So we've got a compact body, but these little legs are giving off a little bit more vibration when it's down there, a little bit more movement. And then these two big pinchers, this is going to kick on the way down. It's flapping as we're working that bait up and down. This is the crawdad profile, but this can really mimic a bluegill. It can mimic any of the different bait that they're feeding on down there. It's a nice little size. This is what they're really used to eating, this profile there. And then we've got different little ribs on there that we can put scent that's gonna carry the scent, and all these different little pieces, these little tiny little, I guess, phalange that come off these legs, that's giving more vibration. So if you've got you know, some dingier water and stained water, as you're moving that bait up and down, that's gonna put off more vibration. Those fish are gonna hone in and really react quickly to it. this is our high probability areas right now. And so you see I'm casting towards these toolies that are out of ways, but then every once in a while I'm still making these casts back deeper in there, especially when it looks like good spots back in there. And what'll happen is these fish are out a little ways because the shade's out right now, but as that sun gets higher and higher, that shade will get more tucked back in there, and so those fish will do the exact same thing. They'll get tighter in there as well. But a lot of fishermen make the mistake of they're used to punching fish back in that thick stuff, so they'll come out first thing in the morning, punch, like we started out, not get any fish, and then not make the adjustment, say, okay, they're not hitting the punch bait today, and they'll give it up. But all we needed to do was make a little bit of adjustment, throw to these outside toolies, and that seems to be where these fish are hanging out right now. There we go. Still getting them on the outside of these toolies. But good little pattern, we're just plucking along the toolies. They're not deep in here. And that's what we're gonna talk about is the different areas, how you break these down throughout the day, lining up with the shade, but then breaking down to the edge, mid-range, and then all the way to the back. Some little important things that we're gonna talk about breaking down what you're looking for. Oh. So one of the things I do when I'm punching, flipping like this, is I divide up the vegetation into 3 different levels. Basically, I've got the outer level, so that's the edge here. It's the first, maybe right at the edge, all the way to about 2 to 3 feet back in there. And then I've got the middle. That's gonna be the biggest range. That's gonna be, 3, 4, all the way to 7, 8 feet back up in this stuff. And then I've got real shallow, real tight to the shoreline. And I wanna make sure that I'm putting casts in all 3 of those different categories until I figure out where these fish are really holding, where the majority of them are. And like this morning, what we found is these fish were more relating to the edge. So they were on the toolies and stuff that were out a little bit farther out, and that was because there was a little bit low light, it was cooler in the morning. So these fish weren't holding real heavy into that stuff. And so I was making sure I casted all the prime locations out on the edge. But then every once in a while, I would make a cast deeper in there. I want to put one in the middle and then put one in the shore. Now, the more pressure a lake gets, the more boats that come by, the more these fish are gonna get spooked back in there deeper. They might start the morning on the edge, but as long as these boats are coming by, buzzing them with trolling motors and stuff, they're either gonna move deeper or they're gonna move shallower into this thicker cover. So you wanna make sure you're making casts way up tight, and you might be able to find these fish that these other anglers have kind of spooked back in there. The other thing with casting up shallow is it's harder casts. So a lot of anglers aren't fishing it because it's just harder to get back in there. So if you really hone in your casting, your flipping skills, you'll be able to fish water that these other anglers aren't, and that's gonna give you an advantage. These fish are gonna be back there. They haven't seen as many lures in front of them that day. There we go, nice. Look at that, that's a perfect example of what's going on. That's a nice stout little bass. Oh man, look at this. Come on buddy, I'm just gonna show you the YouTube world. Let's go. See, this fish still has fight in him because but the time that he bit between when he was in the boat was about 2 seconds, if that. It's a nice chunky little bass. You guys can see right behind me, there's actually a little tree limb going into the water. So we've got this vegetation that floats out here. So it's a couple feet deep underneath, but then that tree, actually that branch extends down the water. So it's something vertical coming through the cover. And this fish was waiting right in there because the second it went underwater, it just slammed it. My line took off. So one of the things with fishing, vegetation and stuff, you want to look for stuff that's different. You got a long pile of hyacinth or any kind of other vegetation, then you've got something different in there. And right here, we've got a nice tree sticking out. That's gonna be probably the most high percentage area in that spot is, they have the vegetation they like, but then they've got something solid as well that they can suspend around. There's gonna be branches and stuff, and nice. Oh, we got this thing. Okay, good, this is a good example. If he's still on there, a lot of times you'll you'll get in the vegetation and it'll get hung up like this. You want to keep pressure on him, because if that fish is still on there, I've got him pinned up against the grass, I'm gonna come over to him, and if you keep pressure, if he starts fighting and stuff, yeah, he'll come free like he just did right there. Perfect. So if we keep that pressure on him, he's not gonna be able to come out. But if we give it slack, that fish is gonna have some room to shake this hook free, and it'll be able to come off. But case in point, that fish was waiting right underneath that log for a little bait to flutter down into him. And that can happen a lot of different ways, you guys. It doesn't have to just be a tree. If you've got a lot of vegetation, you've got some tules sticking out a little ways, that's a great little transition spot. I love anytime you have 2 or more types of cover structure together. So, you know, you got some grass or some hyacinth, something, then tules, that's good. Then you have a log sticking out between those, that's even better. You want multiple pieces of structure, and that's gonna increase their chances of that being a productive spot. Nice. Just tucked into a little shade pocket here. We've got tons of this vegetation, lots of shade. I would bet this is not the only fish under here, especially during the heat of the day. If there's a good spot that fits all the needs of these fish, there's gonna be more than one hanging out there. You know, it's nothing to catch 2, 3, 4, 5 fish in one spot. If it's got lots of oxygen, ooh, he is lively. If it's got lots of, you know, crawdads, other bluegill, you know, whatever they're feeding on, if it's got all that stuff, it's gonna be a great place for the whole gang to hang out. Yeah, I'll just swing this towards the camera. Plucking along. It's the real deal, Holyfield. Fish like being in the cover. They want a reason to go shallow. If it's a little bit of dingier water, if it's lower light, if you've got a lot of vegetation, these largemouth bass feel very comfortable being extremely shallow because they have a better chance of hunting. It's skinnier water, so there's not many places for the prey to flee to, so they're able to trap prey better. There's a lot of stuff that lives up shallow, so these largemouth know if they can go up shallow, they're gonna be able to eat. But they can also be skittish. If the water is real clear water, if there's not a lot of shallow water structure, they're not gonna feel comfortable up there. But if you've got different structure, if you've got dark water, these bass will be up there, and if you have the right bait, put it in the right little areas, you're gonna catch some big old bass. Dude, yes. There it is. There it is. That's gonna be some cool footage. Boom, baby.